you so much for joining me on the Creative Awakening Now podcast. I'm your host, David Matters, and I'm here to bring you stories, interviews, and insights relating to the topics of creativity, inspiration, and practice. My intention is to connect with other people who employ a heart-centered approach to the artistic process and to share this profoundly inspiring content with anyone who cares to hear it. I hope you enjoy. This is a dream, and a dream is never the same. Welcome back, everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in today. This is going to be a solo episode, which I periodically try and throw in, and it's been a while, actually. It seems like it's been quite a while since I did one of these. Had a bunch of really great interviews with a bunch of really great guests recently, so I decided to set aside some time this week to do a little something, and I try and make these a little shorter, a little more personal about my personal experience with the creative process, and just try and give you something to embody this whole practice. And so this week I wanted to talk about making mistakes, or at least the idea of making mistakes. And there's a number of reasons why I want to talk about this, but I think first and foremost, it's because I've been stumbling into these new realms of playing music lately that really have come from just kind of jumping in head first and making all the mistakes I can until I figure my way through it. And whether that's a guitar tuning I've never used before, or a style of singing, or songwriting, I've just been kind of trying to pull out all the stops and put myself into it as much as I can directly, and not worry about the results so much, and just kind of focus on the act of creating, and doing that from a totally unreserved place and just going for it. And in that, clearly, there are all kinds of quote unquote mistakes being made, and wrong notes and just terrible sounds and all kinds of craziness. But when I just commit to it, and obviously I'm not going to do this on stage in front of a bunch of people who are there to listen. That would just be rude, really. But it's for the sake of experimenting, and for the sake of tapping into inspiration, for personal growth, for practice. I think it's a really beautiful thing to just jump headlong into it. And even improvising and stuff in live situations, so sometimes it's perfectly fine, in my opinion, to go for it. And obviously you want to keep your craziness to a minimum when you're playing with other people. But I've learned that the more I just kind of commit to this vision that I have, or this sound that I'm trying to create, or this feeling that I'm trying to express through words, or whatever it may be, I inevitably gain something from it, even if my initial idea doesn't come out so well. And a lot of that is kind of letting go of the idea of results, like I said, too. It's just, not setting out with some serious, steadfast direction that says, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to play this, and when I've done that, I have personally gained a lot from it. And I think it's something that we just, especially in our culture, we just totally overlook and totally disregard, because we want to be perfect. We want to be the best. We want to be, better than everyone else, or at least as good as everyone else. We're constantly comparing ourselves, and I most definitely fall into this trap all the time, where I'm like, doing my thing in my personal groove, and when I'm inspired and I'm feeling it, it's great. But when I'm maybe a little less inspired, and I'm looking around at other people trying to seek some kind of inspiration, I always will find somebody that's just far better than me and doing so many great things, and I'm just like, man, I'm not good enough. I'm not there yet. I work so hard, but I still will never be as good as that person is. And it's just it's silly. It's a waste of time, because you can only be who you are, and you can only start from where you are. And making mistakes is exactly how we improve. If you let those kind of ideas get in your way and knock you down and hold you back just because you're not as good as somebody else, or you're afraid to put yourself out there because you're not, living up to your own standards, then you're limiting yourself in a large way. And like I said, I know this from experience, and I've kind of gotten to this place in my life now where I'm constantly trying to overcome these obstacles because they come up all the time. Especially, and I've talked about this before with just like social media and things. Um, it's so easy to get into that comparing mind, that judging mind, and instead of worrying about your true purpose, your true means of expression, and how you do it uniquely, in your own way. And like I said, I've been at this point where I'm trying to just embody that no matter what. And for me lately, that's come out, and I've decided to be playing more solo music. Obviously, I still play with my band, Life Like Water, and that's my main goal, which is all my original music. But I will collaborate with other musicians. But I decided that I was going to start doing more solo things purely for the sake of just getting over that personal block and just putting myself out there. And the last couple times I've been in that position, it's just been really beautiful. I push myself beyond my boundaries and my comfort zone, and almost every single time I do that, I am rewarded by, if nothing else, somebody seeing the authenticity that comes from that, and putting my whole heart into it, and it resonating with somebody, and whatever the results are, they come. And this mission of mine to do more solo and just to do more directly of myself and stop trying to hide behind other people, or um, the whole world of creating a band and putting that stuff out there, it's a lot of work, and it's so much more than just the creative process, and you get really tangled up in it, which is necessary. There's no doubt about it. It's like running a business, but it's not all there is. So this is kind of my little mission, and like this podcast has been for me. I decided that I was going to do this. I didn't care about the results. I really didn't care if people were going to give it much attention, or what came from it. I knew it was going to be a lot of my time, but I wanted to do it. It was something that meant a lot to me, and I knew I was going to connect with other great, just heart-centered, creative people, and so I did it. And sure enough, man, it's been absolutely wonderful. This is what, my 44th podcast now, and man, I've had some great conversations, and I've met some amazing people, made some new friends, and got turned on to new music and new teachings and all these things. So it's these are the things that come when you don't worry about making mistakes, and you put yourself out there, and you open up to that sense of vulnerability. And I wanted to read this thing that I wrote some time ago on my website. It's on my blog, and it was about mistakes. It's called "The Wisdom of Mistakes." And when I was searching back through some old writing and stuff, I came upon it, and I was like, "Wow, that's exactly what I want to talk about." So I'm going to read that for you now, and I hope it kind of strikes a chord with you. What does it mean to make mistakes? What overall effect is caused by doing things wrong or unsuccessfully? I think this is an important subject to look into. We generally make the assumption that doing things in a way that doesn't produce the desired results is a bad thing. But is this true? I'm going to have to make the argument that making mistakes is actually not as bad as some might think. In fact, I might even go so far as to say that mistakes might even be a good thing in a certain situation. Think about it. How would we ever learn anything if it wasn't for making our own mistakes? Doing things incorrectly and learning from what didn't work the first time is the foundation of human development. In the case of children, we can see this in a way that is irrefutable. Each time a child tries to stand up and winds up falling back onto its soggy diaper, it is learning. Each time something gets picked up off the floor and placed into a curious mouth, only to be spit back out in disgust, that child is learning. Sure, you can call this unskillful decision a mistake, but you would really be denying the true essence of that experience. For adults, a mistake can be looked at in much the same way. It is just an opportunity for learning. We are testing the boundaries of what works in any given situation, and as long as we take stock of the outcome and resolve to act accordingly next time, a mistake can actually become a powerful tool for achieving our goals. With a strong enough will and thick enough skin, we might even feel a sense of gratitude for the times where we missed the mark a little. We can see it as a sort of measurement that wasn't there when we started. For example, imagine that you're going to attempt your very first painting. On the first attempt, the canvas is going to look totally empty, or going to be totally empty. And because you have no previous experience with this particular endeavor, you will probably feel like you are just tossing paint into some creamy abyss. This is totally natural and is just a leap that is inevitably required for all those who are brave enough to try something new and different. Now, it's possible that you will turn out to be a natural and will take to this new practice like a fish to water, but it's much more likely that your first painting is going to be sloppy and rather unremarkable. You will probably make all kinds of mistakes and will feel the need to give it another try. If this is the case, on the second painting, thanks to that courageous first attempt and because of what was learned before, you will now have a general outline, or at least an idea of what not to do for the next session. I once heard a great musician named Pat Donahue tell a story about Chet Atkins, who was one of the greatest country finger-picking guitar players of all times. Pat was on stage talking about Chet's philosophy about playing quote-unquote wrong notes, and he was demonstrating everything he was saying on the guitar. Chet's idea was that a note can never be considered a wrong note as long as you play it at least twice. If you make a mistake and play something out of key, all you have to do is play it again and turn that mistake into an interesting new part of the song. As a way of proving this idea, Pat would deliberately play a note that was outside of the scale and then repeat the mistake until it became a part of the song. It was brilliant and totally turned the idea of making mistakes on its head. The whole point is just to shift our perspectives about the things that land outside of our expectations. If we can approach all situations in life with this kind of attitude, we'll have a lot more resilience when it comes to making mistakes. We will be able to use them as fuel for innovation and creativity instead of allowing them to consume us with the ravenous flames of doubt and judgment. And that's just as relevant to me now. It's maybe even more so just because I've been putting myself out there more and more and realizing that, wrong notes are just, it's kind of part of the game. You play and play and play and you try and get better and better and better. And you do, obviously, with practice, but there's always going to be something that isn't just right by your standards, maybe by other standards. But what I've learned above anything else is that it just doesn't matter. I mean, you have to put yourself into it fully and you have to commit and not worry so much about that. You have to obviously perfect things to what degree you can. Your playing, your singing, your lyricism, it's got to be on par or nobody's going to want to listen to it. And that's just the truth of the matter. But beyond that, there's this whole other domain that I get into in this show a lot. And it's, when you start tapping into the realm of authenticity. And that is one thing that I have bad mouthed social media a number of times on this show, but in truth, there is beautiful things about it. And I really love when I come upon somebody who I follow and I really like their music or their art or whatever, and they do a live video or just have a little personal video from their phone or something on there, and you look at it and it's not perfect. They're just doing it. And even so, I've watched some people that I admire greatly, and they're some of the best, and they'll do something and there'll be a mistake in it, and they just kind of go with it. They just accept it, like, oh, whoops, that was the wrong note, or that was the wrong lyric or whatever. And, that sense of vulnerability and authenticity it cuts through so much more than virtuosity and skill. I mean, clearly those things are very beautiful, and when you see them, it's breathtaking. But if it's just that, it's just technique. It's just this mechanical approach to things. But when you really hear somebody's voice coming through it, you hear their heart, their intention, and they do it without worrying about flaws and blemishes and mistakes. They just go for it. It is just such a powerful thing to witness and experience. And I think if I could do anything through this show, I would love to encourage people just to put yourself out there a little more, just create a little bit more, and not have so many judgments about it, and try not to compare yourself to other people, and go from there. Start from where you are, and that's really the essence of a lot of personal development practices too. And through spiritual practices and such, like my meditation and stuff, that is really what a lot of it is about. Is just sitting with exactly where you are, who you are, in whatever situation and circumstance you may be in, and open yourself up to it. Be that. even if it's something that you're not happy about and that you really want to change about yourself, you can't really change it without accepting it and acknowledging it, paying attention to it, and working towards it, getting beyond it. It's a really incremental process. And if you do any kind of meditation or practice of that sort, it becomes very apparent very quickly that there's just so much junk rolling around in our heads, mostly judgments, personal judgments, judgments otherwise as well, to all kinds of people and things and situations, and, just about everything in life. But I think maybe more than anything, it's about ourselves. Even if we are accomplished, even if we are, talented, even if we are famous, there's definitely large traces of this personal judgment going on for everyone. And I mean, I've never talked to anybody who hasn't experienced this, so I know it's definitely a prevalent, relevant factor. And if you let that limit you, if you focus on it, if you hold on to it, it just builds and builds and builds, and you just have this endless loop of judgment, and looking at yourself like, oh man, I'm not good enough. I'm all this effort and what's coming from it, and it'll never get you anywhere. The effort is required, but everything else is extra. Beating yourself up about it is extra, and it's just baggage that you're carrying around for no reason. It's not going to get you anywhere. So, yeah, I want to just encourage you to just step out there. Open up to exactly who you are. See yourself in the place that you are currently. Don't imagine yourself in the future. Don't cling to things about the past. Just be exactly who you are and create from that space, and just know that your authenticity is going to build. It compiles, and everything you do from this point on, you're only going up. If you have that kind of mentality, you're only climbing higher. You're only growing more and more and more, because there's nothing really below you. There's nowhere to fall if you're being honest about it. If you are who you are exactly, there's nowhere else you're going to go. This is my music. This is where I am. This is my art. This is exactly who I am. I can only improve upon this, really, unless you give up, in which case you're abandoning it a lot more than that. But let's hope you're not giving up. So, yeah, I think that's a fair amount of banter. I don't like to talk too much about it. And I was going to share a song this week, but I think I'm going to hold off on that. I got a bunch of new material coming up that I'm really excited about. Like I said, for some of the solo stuff and for the band, and yeah, a bunch of good stuff. And I want to share it, and I will soon on the next podcast. But I wanted to share that blog post first. So yeah, next week, and I got a bunch of good people coming up as well. Some really great interviews coming up, some musicians and teachers, and really cool stuff that it's in the works. And I also have some big things going on with Creative Awakening now, my website, and it's kind of just turning into an entity of its own. I don't know. It's started out just being a blog and a place for me to have my ideas and to connect with people and put my music. And then I did, started doing the podcast, and now I'm connecting that all, and I'm trying to. My dream is to start hosting events based around this kind of stuff, and it is coming together. I am building up an event right now that's going to be happening in May, hopefully, and it's going to be most everything that I want to do with it is going to be connected to creativity in some way and some kind of life betterment situation. I mean, whether that's spiritual practice, meditation, or yoga, or whatever, or it's just environmental awareness, or it's something to help socially, whatever it is. I want creativity and the human experience to be wrapped up inside of each other. So I want to be trying to host musicians and writers and artists and teachers, spiritual teachers and healers, and all these people, and try and bring it together like I do with the podcast, and maybe somehow incorporate them together if I can figure out the technological aspect of it. But more on that will definitely be coming soon. I don't want to talk about it too much now because it's still basically just a dream. I'm working towards it. But yeah, I want to turn Creative Awakening now into a whole kind of entity that is functioning for this cause. So I am really excited about all of that, and I hope that it excites you guys too. Thank you for listening. I really appreciate it. I appreciate everybody who's left a comment or liked an episode or shared it with a friend. I would love it if you would continue doing that. Just share it on your page. Take a little screenshot of it. Go into iTunes, leave a rating, leave a review. Any of that kind of stuff really helps. I started a new Facebook group or Facebook page for this Creative Awakening now. It's a little more condensed. It's to the point. The other page was kind of just all kinds of stuff. So if you haven't checked that out, please do. Check it out on Instagram and all that good stuff. And yeah, stay tuned. I have all kinds of good stuff coming up. So I hope you have a fantastic week, whenever you're listening to this. And we'll talk soon. Much love.